Tensions between Iran and Israel are not new, but the latest conflict, now in its seventh day, is renewing concerns that extend far beyond the borders of the two Middle Eastern countries. According to officials this morning, a new barrage of Iranian missiles caused extensive damage to a major hospital in the south, while Israel attacked a nuclear facility near the country's center, although there appeared to be no major damage in that situation. Meanwhile, Iran's supreme leader said that any U.S. military intervention would result in, quote, irreparable damage. So joining us now to talk about this unfolding situation and the broader implications is Robert Huish, Associate Professor of International Development Studies at Dalhousie University. Good morning, Robert. Thank you so much for coming in.
Good to see you, Crystal.
We have you here a lot. It feels like this is an unsettled time in
You have good coffee
politics.
here, but
we have great coffee, and you're welcome anytime. All right, let's we only have our 5 minutes. So for our viewers at home, give us the Coles notes on the relationship between Iran and Israel.
Okay, so that's huge. We could spend all day, if not all year, on that. But really quick, this conflict that's coming up right now has been in the works for about 20 or 30 years. And so Israel has got strategic plans to put aggression directly onto Iran and Iran vice versa. So with Israel, their defense forces have already located nuclear facilities, energy production facilities, key leadership within Iran's military, and also nuclear scientists who work inside Iran. Now, Israel's issue here is that a nuclear-armed Iran would destabilize the Middle East to less of an advantage for Israel, and it would basically infringe on the security of the Israeli state. For Iran, they have, of course, the military, which controls their own territory. There's the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, which is meant to protect the values of the Islamic Revolution. And then you even have something called the Quds Force, and the Quds Force means the Jerusalem Force. That is a wing of the Iranian Islamic National Guard, I should say, that's designed to eradicate Israel. So there's long ideological tensions between both sides. There's been exchanges of air fire back and forth over the years. There's even been cyber attacks and assassinations back and forth. Okay. So that's long
So all of that context brings us to the question, why this conflict now?
Okay, so Benjamin Netanyahu says that Iran is only weeks or days away from enriching uranium that could then be produced into a nuclear weapon. Donald Trump now seems to be believing that story, which may go against his own intelligence officers reporting a different story. But the real reason here is that within Iran, there is instability within the country. A lot of people are not happy with the Islamic State, the Islamic Guard, the Ayatollahs. So there's a lot of civil dissent within Iran. So I think that what we see Mr. Netanyahu doing right now is taking an opportunity to say, oh, there's enough civil unrest in Iran, and I've got enough problems of being, potentially facing sanctions, up for war crimes against Gaza. Let's take this opportunity to push into Iran itself right now in order to create regime change. So this is high risk, big ticket stuff, and there is, I'm going to be very clear on this, no diplomatic exit strategy for Israel or soon to be the U.S. to pull out of that conflict altogether.
Okay, so the dangerous territory. And you've mentioned the U.S. Now, U.S. President Donald Trump has been quite vocal in sharing his opinions on social media, as he often is. Here's an example. Let's just read this one. We now have complete and total control of the skies over Iran. Iran had good sky trackers and other defensive equipment, and well, we can see it there. Anyway, nobody does it better than the good old USA. This seems to me interesting word choices, but what is Trump trying to achieve by sending out messages like this?
So I think the best label is that Trump tries to seek out coercive persuasion. So before he's trying to get a deal, which is what he was encouraging Iran to do just a few weeks ago, now it's bully, 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 intimidate, and then maybe strike out a deal. But it seems that the U.S. objective here is to have the Ayatollahs out of power, that now it's down to a regime change plan for the U.S. Now, what role the U.S. Air Force is going to play in the upcoming conflict, that still remains to be questioned, but there's a lot of pressure right now for the U.S. to charge up its B-2 bomber, put what's called a bunker-busting bomb on it, and aim directly at some of Iran's nuclear facilities that are very deeply embedded into mountains. Even if they hit that, we're talking only 1/3 of Iran's nuclear capability would be impacted. There's sites all around the country, including out to the eastern part, which of course borders against Afghanistan.
Okay, this sounds frightening as we get closer to these kind of major attacks, violent attacks. What are the wider political implications of these sorts of actions?
So I think what we're seeing here is Israel gearing up for just an air conflict is what they want. Now they're spending about $300 million a day on ordnance going into Iran. Iran has about between 2,000 and 3,000 missiles that could come towards Israel. So it's going to be a war of attrition. Who's going to run out of money first? Who's going to run out of missiles first in that way? But ultimately, if history tells us anything, and a great book on this is People's History by Howard Zinn, shows us very clearly that bombing doesn't work. It does not achieve your goal to eradicate a country or to change a leadership. It usually has the opposite effect and creates massive unrest and instability. So if the U.S. winds up getting sucked into an air campaign in Iran, it's going to destabilize the entire region for a decade.
Interesting. We have 30 seconds left, Robert. Where do you want to close this off?
I think the thing to remember here is that we've seen so much destruction, so much bombing to Gaza in the last couple of years. Hamas is still there. So when we hear leadership say that bombs are the solution, they're never the solution. Bombs target civilians. There's collateral damage that can be calculated, but it's executed anyway. It's not a way to bring stability through bombing and warfare. There needs to be stable negotiations and political solutions and diplomatic solutions. Warfare is not the answer.
Robert, thank you so much for coming in and sharing this perspective today.
Thanks, Crystal.